Happy summer, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're going to get started in just a moment. And while we're waiting, if you would like to change your name, your Zoom name to reflect your name, your title, your organization, that would be great. Great to have you here. We're going to get started in just a moment. And if you've attended before, what you will see us do is encourage you to ask questions. And what we do is we collect those questions from the chat and we work with the panelists afterwards to create a Q&A. And so again, as you enter, if you want to keep yourself on mute and then change your name to include your title and organization, that would be great. Thanks for joining today. Happy summer. And we're going to get going. All right. So my name is Candy Castellanos, and I'm here with Ariel Sullivan, and we are here as co-facilitators for the Improving the Circularity of Compostables and Compost project. And this is Discovery Workshop number 8. Similar to the composting infrastructure, this is added, and so this is a bonus Discovery Workshop, which is fantastic, a very important topic. And so we're going to do a very brief project overview and then dive right in so we maximize the time for the panelists. And so thank you for being here. And as you enter, if you can please change your Zoom title to reflect your name, your title, and your organization. So here we are, we're at Discovery Workshop number 8. We are working through a series of 13, and we started with the piles, and we're moving all the way through the supply chain, the solid waste systems, all the way back to policy. And so this particular conversation is about creating quality compost for end markets and large scale application and all the nuances there. So this initiative involves stakeholders from various industries. Some stakeholders may be considered competitors in the marketplace. This process should not be used to obtain individual company advantage, nor used in pursuit of any anti-competitive objective. To do so may violate state and federal antitrust laws. And so we are involved in a 2-year project. And so this is about everyone improving the whole system. This project is about improving the circularity of compostables and compost and working together as pioneers to imagining a future where there's a cohesive and seamless collaboration across all organizations that are part of the U.S. composting system. And so this is a whole system strategic planning project. And so the graphic that you see here highlights some of the many stakeholders that are involved in this interconnected ecosystem. And the idea is to do a long on-ramp of discovery. And we are going to do a 3-day intensive strategic planning event in Denver at the end of September. And we are going to be working together to create a common purpose with clear action plans based on the work that everyone is ready and willing to do together. We are guided by an incredible group of people on our steering committee. This cross-sector group meets every other week and is guiding the selection of the 200 participants that will be coming together, creating that microsystem of the whole system. And so we are deeply grateful for all of their input and time. This group is also part of our Circularity partners. And so this amazing group is what made this series possible and this project possible. All the folks here are supporting this project in one way or another and helped us launch. And so if you are interested in supporting this project, please let us know. We'd love to have you. And so what are we doing? So again, this is a 2-year initiative. It's a whole system strategic planning effort, and we're focused on working with all of you, engaging pioneers from all across the system to come together to create a shared vision and a collective roadmap toward optimizing the circular economy of the U.S. composting industry. And so while it centers, it's not limited to food contact compostables, and then we're guided by the future search model. So what do we mean by circularity? Basically, there's a lot of investment and intention around composting. And so circularity for the U.S. composting system means that the intentions of compostability are realized for compostable packaging and organic materials, and that the end products produced are able to be put back into meaningful use. Our steering committee has put together these purpose statements. And so, this broad sector coalition is hoping that this effort designs an inclusive whole system circularity model for the health of the composting industry that maximizes environmental benefits, improves collaboration and communication, improves information flow between all the stakeholders, identifies strategy to direct more food waste to commercial composting facilities that creates both value and confidence for all stakeholders, and to shift stakeholder behavior to mitigate contamination. And so this project includes 3 parts. And so if you think about an hourglass, we are beginning with the whole industry, and anyone and everyone is invited to be part of these discovery workshops. There are 13 of them. We started in February and they'll go all the way through September. They're approximately every other week. And then we are concentrating into a microcosm of the system and coming together for a 3-day event in Denver, September 23rd through 26th. If you're interested in participating, let us know. And then really that's when the work begins. And so there'll be a facilitated activation of the strategic plan with the community, with the U.S. composting industry from October through November 2025. All right, Ariel.
Yeah, and as leading up to the event in September, this meeting today is a discovery workshop. We have 13 of them scheduled to gather information around the opportunities and challenges from the different stakeholder groups within the system. So each of these stakeholder groups represents a group or an audience that we hope to have in the room with us in September as well. So we really have a whole system understanding of the current state to plan and strategize appropriately together. And yeah, here we are at number 8, creating quality compost and large scale application. And then we'll be moving to the certifiers, labs, and academic researchers group in 2 weeks. So as you know, please, as Candy mentioned, these are open to everyone. We have a really good turnout from folks across the industry. So please continue to share these. And all of the recordings are on the YouTube channel, the Improving the Circularity YouTube channel that I can put in the chat in just a second. And this is a really good resource from your peers and colleagues from different stakeholder groups. They've been very insightful so far. We hope they continue to be very insightful. And this data will be used as input into the strategic planning conversation as well. So we've been collating the data, and you may have seen an email come out. It was actually right before 4th of July that has all of the themes on challenges, opportunities, advice for stakeholders from Discovery Workshop 1 through 7. So if you want to go back and look at the data and see what's coming through, if you want to refresh your memory, please look for that email. And we're going to shift into our panelists today. So this group is focused on end users and creating quality compost at scale. We have Pierce Lewis, who is the co-founder of Dirt Hugger, Chuck Dupree, president and founder of Nature Cycle, Ryan Serrato, VP Product Sales and Service from Denali. We have Calla Rose Ostrander, the director of the Carbon Project from People, Food, and Land, and Charlie Baer, who's going to be providing his answers by proxy today. He's the co-founder of Compost Operations. He's the co-founder and Compost Operations Manager for Earth Matter, New York, Inc. And then we have Clinton Sander, the marketing manager from A1 Organics. So we're super grateful to have all of you here today. Just wanted to give you a high-level process overview for you. And then I think we're going to go to Linda real quick. Is that correct, Candy?
Yeah, we can just kind of highlight. Let me stop sharing for a moment, and then everybody will see the panelist questions in the chat as well. So we're going to read them out. You're going to see them in the chat, and so you'll have an opportunity to follow along. And just wanted to apologize to our panelists. We had a little bit of a typo on the panelist page, so apologies about that. So all of our panelists today represent compost manufacturers and other folks in the industry that are intersecting with end markets. So the compost sales, creating quality compost, and large scale application. And so just wanted to call that out. And so, yeah.
And just from a process standpoint, for those of you who may be new, I know there's a lot of familiar returning faces, but we'll have about 3 minutes to go through each question. We're going to go question by question. And if you do have additional questions, follow-up questions, clarifying questions, specific questions, please put them in the chat. We answer them in a follow-up Q&A, and at times we have enough remaining time in the session to pick a question or two to ask the panelists. So it's a really good way to get a sense of where the participants' minds are at and what they're thinking. So please share and bring your voice into the chat. And one other link that I just wanted to put in here, we are gathering, if you are interested in coming to the event itself in September, we're gathering names for waitlist. So we're currently in the invitation process of getting a good selection from the different stakeholder groups. So just wanted to keep that on your radar. And now I think we can go over to Linda, who's going to share a highlight from a recent USCC market study.
Yes, hello everyone, and I'm sorry about we were playing around and I can't seem to get rid of that notes panel, but it doesn't matter. There's nothing in it. Anyway, I'm Linda from US Composting Council, and I'm only speaking here once just to give a little bit of context to today's talk. I'm so excited. We're talking about quality compost for healthy soils, which is the driver for all of our composters and compost manufacturers, is the end product. So it's a great topic. So the US Composting Council commissioned a study back in 2019, and the data was collected over that period, over 2020 and 2021. And it was done by the Environmental Research and Education Foundation. And I pulled out just a little bit of the data on compost use. We surveyed about just over 300 companies and involving multiple facilities, more than 300 facilities. And 120 provided information on the markets that their compost is going to, that you can see here. So you can see that the highest number of facilities are sending compost to the landscaping market, which could be anything from developing commercial shopping centers to residential communities. And this is one that is actually getting a lot of activation through a lot of the compost procurement ordinances in California, and that are coming in Washington State and other places around the country. So that's a really interesting thing. You can also see by percentage of weight of sales that agriculture at that time, and we've had a couple of years go by since, was the number one weight-based source of compost sales. And the interesting thing about that is, since the time of this study, the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, has codified Practice 336, which is a carbon sequestration, to encourage carbon sequestration by farmers if they use compost. So it has actually been adopted in almost every state in the country by now. And it's starting to take hold. We're starting to see a lot more compost going to agricultural sales, which is really important to our industry. So this number is likely to be, when we do the next version of this next year, to be even higher. And then you can just see there some of the other industries or the other uses where compost is going. And then at the bottom of the slide, you will see our Seal of Testing Assurance program, which is based on TMEC, which is a highly researched testing method for compost and compost use. And it's also enforced through lab testing number of times a year by participants. And you can see how many tons are participating over the last year in the STA program. What they're testing for is pathogens and metals, variety of things, and also the number of facilities participating and products in that program. So I just wanted to give a brief overview, because each of these speakers will be talking about different markets, and you can see that range. Thank you.
Great context for us as we begin our conversation. And I will read the first question for you. So as part of we're going to start with introducing everyone and giving them a chance to share a little bit about who they are. But number one is, a part of introducing yourself and your organization, describe how you intersect with either compost manufacturing, compost sales, or the large scale application of compost. So if we could begin with Pierce, that would be wonderful. Welcome, Pierce.
Hi, thanks. And I want to say thank you to Candy and Ariel for hosting this and going through this process. I think the future search process is pretty cool. And just the different applications for it. It's not only for compost, they've done it on some other processes as well. So it's pretty cool. And thanks for letting us be a part of it. My name is Pierce Lewis. I'm a co-founder of Dirt Hugger. We're a commercial composting facility located Now we're in Washington State, right across the border from Oregon. We did begin in 2010 in Oregon, and we operated out of that facility for 5 years. We were a subtenant to Google. They decided to build a database on the land that we were on, so we had to move to Washington. We call it the Painful Mile. It's 1.1 mile away, but it was a different state, different regulations, different permits, different regulators. So we began that facility in 2015 through many of you sort of backed a Kickstarter fund that we did in order to get that going. We've operated there. We do a aerated static pile or turned aerated static pile technique. We have a 63,000 ton per year facility, and we produce about 40 to 45,000 yards a year of compost. We are an OMRI listed facility, and we also are a STA participant. So that's kind of a background of our yardage. We did this year, we sold out every week from May 22nd through June 24th. So even at 45,000 yards a year, we missed 55 loads this spring due to lack of inventory. And so while that sounds cool, it's actually pretty painful to call your customers in the middle of spring and say that, you know, we're out of compost, we're producing it. We were screening with 2 screens 7 days a week and still couldn't produce enough to meet the market demand. So in terms of our end markets and sort of who we serve, we have a really diverse range of customers. We live in an ag heavy area. So in our region, we have cherry growers, we have apples, we have pears, we have a lot of mixed vegetable farms, less so now, but you know, legal marijuana was a market, I'd say 5 years ago. That's kind of gone up and down. And then we do also a lot of direct sales. So direct sales to end consumers is our largest fraction of sales. And finally, we sell a lot into spec soil projects. So that would be new infrastructure where, you know, they're building a bioswale at a new building and they need certain infiltration rates or they need certain spec soil. So we do a lot of custom blending for those types of markets that are kind of a technical sale. Yeah, we do also, I think in terms of large scale application, we own a handful of spreaders. In the past, we have gone out and provided that service. At this point, we've backed out of that section of the market and we just rent our spreaders out to customers. And we saw that as an order winner. We had people, you know, large vineyards saying, we'll buy 2,000 yards of your compost if we can have a way to spread it. And so I remember when that first order came through and we didn't have a spreader, I was scrambling with my partner and said, we got to go buy a spreader, you know, in order to make this sale. And so that's kind of how we got pulled into that. And it is a bit of an order winner for some of these things, but we did learn over time that we're really not the best service provider. We'd let the farmer just do it on their own. So yeah, that's a background of us. We are in the middle of a expansion, so we will go from 62,000 tons a year to 90,000 tons a year, hopefully. And ironically, we're really being pulled by demand for compost. So it's less of a push. We actually don't have a lot of push for the feedstock capacity right now. And we're debating pausing the expansion because there wasn't a feedstock push saying like, hey, can you take more material? But we're being pulled by our customers running out of compost. And so we need to expand and find more feedstock in order to create more compost.
Great. Thank you, Pierce. I'm going to go over to Ryan.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Or actually, it's afternoon where I am, but appreciate being here. My name is Ryan Strada. I'm the VP of Product Sales and Service at Denali. I've been in this industry for about 12 years, and my whole time in the industry has been revolved around compost, mulches, soils, bulk product sales, marketing, distribution. I've come up through what used to be We Care Organics and now is Denali, and I've grown in a role here at the company where I oversee an 18-state region, which is Denali's North region. And in those 18 states, we have, I believe, 13 product production facilities that I oversee the sales, product coordination, dispatch, delivery, customer service, billing, and then any escalation client issues for that group and that team. I have about, it changes here and there, because I have drivers and stuff, but at any given time between 20 and 25 people under management for me. Give you an idea of the size of what we do. So last year, in my region, we sold 896,000 cubic yards of bulk products. That's compost, mulch, engineered soils, and that does not include any residuals, which is a comment for later, but or overs, as I call them. So we sell through distribution, direct to landscape, turf, construction, golf courses, sports complexes. We work with engineers and architects on project specifications. And like I said, I kind of oversee that entire product customer experience all the way from the sale to the, there's really not one invoice that doesn't cross my desk before it goes to a customer. So that's my role. I live in Pennsylvania, married, and I have an 8-year-old son.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for being here. Calla Rose.
All right, let's get off mute. Good morning, everybody. Am I off of mute? Okay. Hello. It's nice to see many people that I've seen around before, and especially folks at Dirt Hugger. Hi. So today I wear a lot of hats in this space because I've been fortunate to be working for a man named John Wick, who is the co-founder of the Marin Carbon Project. Gets a little confusing what I'm working on because I tend to work on barriers, obstacles, and opportunities as they come up for the industry at large, and more specifically for the industry in California. Right now, the work I'm doing is being funded through a nonprofit where it's been for a long time, called People, Food, and Land. It's out of the Central Valley of California. And this year, we are really focusing on keeping 1383, which is the law there that diverts organics from landfills. So there was some threats to that. So we're working on keeping that in place, and also making it work better, both for the municipalities who have to adhere to that law, and for the composters in the state. In California, for those of you who might not be aware, it's largely dominated by a franchise system, the composting space, and those haulers that own the franchise. This means that the majority of the money that composters make is coming from their hauling fee and not from the compost itself. In some cases, we have really amazing composters who make awesome product. And in other cases, we have composters that make not the best product because they don't care so much about the product. They're making their money elsewhere. So our focus for the year, we continue to support commercial composting and work with the California Composting Council. But our focus this year has been on expanding the ability for agriculture and for community composters to make product. So we're trying to, right now there's a ceiling on how the compost gets put in. I know I have 3 minutes, so I'm not going to get too deep in this, but essentially in California, you can be really big or you can be really little. And so we're trying to open up a space for what we like to call the schmedium, or like small, medium scale composter, to be able to operate in their locality. As Matt Cotton, who's one of my mentors, always says, the economics of compost are local because the cost of hauling. I think maybe in Dirt Hugger's situation, you've got a lot of high value crops that want that. But by in general, when we're focusing on marginalized lands like rangeland or fire restoration land, there's not a lot of money to work with. So the closer we can make the compost to those end markets, the better. So our big goal with People, Food, and Land this year is to help more compost be created closer to markets that have maybe a little bit less of a high price that they can pay for that product, while also bringing on other products in terms of differentiation in price, quality, and type, higher carbon for rangelands, higher nitrogen for croplands. So I know we'll get into some of the specifics of that, but that kind of sets the scene for what I'm working on and what I'll be talking about today.
Thanks, Calla Rose. Okay, I'm going to read the answer. Hold on one second. Replace spotlight. Okay, I'm going to read the answer for Charlie by proxy, and then we're going to go to Clinton Sander, and then we're going to go to Chuck Dupree, who just joined us. So welcome, Chuck. We'll get you up to speed, and I'm just going to model basically the answer to question 1, and then we'll go to Clinton, then we'll go to you. So Charlie's answer is, we're a municipally supported nonprofit that operates a small NYSDEC registered facility on Governor's Island in the harbor just off the tip of Manhattan. The site is called the Compost Learning Center, and education is at the heart of everything we do. Governor's Island is a former military installation now owned by the city. Maintenance, operations, and development are managed by the Trust for Governor's Island. We handle 750 to 800 tons a year of mixed feedstock. About 75 tons per year is pre and post consumer food scrap generated by tenants, vendors, and events on the island under our close partnership with the trust called Zero Waste Island. Only one of the food establishments is in a permanent year-round facility and able to use reusable serviceware. Everything else is served on compostables. The island hosts close to 1 million visitors a year. Since 2012, Earth Matter New York has also been a part of an ecosystem of residential food scrap drop-off collection sites through New York City. At its height, the system encompassed 200 plus drop-off sites and collected over 1,500 tons a year of very clean food scraps. Earth Matter processed 365 tons per year of this material. The system was defunded in December of 2023. The City Council has recently restored funding for this community scale work. What shape it takes is still to be determined. Since 2012, we have accepted the full range of rigid and film plastics and fiber products. We also handle woody debris, leaves, and yard trimmings from the island and several nearby city parks. All the feedstocks are combined for processing in ASP or covered ASP systems. We work closely with all of the generators to assure third-party product certification and clean back-of-house separation. We maintain a store of compostable supplies, but no one is required to buy from us. Public engagement and education at the waste stations is a challenge. We find certified products disintegrate readily, most in the first week and 95% within 4 weeks. 4 weeks is our retention time in each initial phase. Compostables are never a contaminant at the end of the process. Occasionally, we bench test products using the dose method in a 1 CY bin. At a 4th-inch screening, we achieve a 65-35 split product to overs. Overs are returned to the process after hand picking of contamination. As a municipally funded nonprofit, we have a different market approach than others at the table. We are not allowed to sell our product since we don't produce a lot, 300 to 400 CY per year. It must be of the highest quality. We are STA certified and do additional testing for biology. We continually push our process towards good nutrient values and great biological diversity and balance, achieved with the least effort and carbon expenditure. We have found genome testing to be useful and will hopefully be able to explore it further. And then Clinton, let's go over to you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to be on here again. Am I being heard?
Yep.
Okay, it's good. Just confirming. Yeah, my name is Clinton Sander, and first thing, I just want to thank Candy and Ariel for what they're doing, and I want to thank everybody for this push and this movement of this discovery session. And if anybody on this call has not had the opportunity to go back to the YouTube channel and watch through all of the different workshops that they have done, please, please, please do. There's so much incredible, insightful information that they are gathering through these conversations. I just want to plug that because it's really valuable. But yeah, so Clinton Sander, A1 Organics. I'm the marketing manager. I've been with A1 for about 7 years. And I came out of the retail natural foods market and industry. So I had a really good firsthand perspective on the front of the house collection and back of the house collection on large scale and the challenges associated with that, with contamination. A1 Organics is actually celebrating our 50th anniversary. We've been in the state of Colorado for just over 50 years, 4th generational compost operation. We process around currently about 525,000 tons annually in organics, and that could be what we call feedstocks, over 38 different types of incoming organic material. Could be brewery residuals, could be biosolids, could be food waste. I don't like to call it food waste, could be food, natural resources is what I like to call that. And then that translates into over 400 to 450,000 cubic yards of either finished compost or mulches or blended soils, kind of like what Ryan was speaking towards. And Pierce, I just want to say we got some compost for you whenever you're ready. We'll just send over a whole train. We'll just fill up a train. Let's fill up a train. We'll send it your direction. I do want to ask Candy or Ariel, can I show a photo? Because I think photos are really great for perspective. And I just want to show a photo real quick for everybody. Can I do that?
Yep,
Sure,
that's
you
great.
should be able to share your screen.
Okay, great. Let me just make sure this works. Is that working? You guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's our Keensburg facility, which is east, about 45 minutes northeast of Denver in Colorado. So as you can see, that's 425 acres. It's our largest facility. Again, we've been in Colorado for a long time, and we've been the primary largest processor of organics in the state. We are not a hauler. We do not haul organics to our facility. We are primarily a processor, and we make great finished quality compost. That's what we want to do. But just to give you perspective, that is our site, and our boundary line is that road all the way around, you see around the site. So we continue to make high quality finished compost that we sell into pretty much all markets. Agriculture is not our largest market though. That is what we call the sleeping elephant in Colorado. We face challenges in that market because we're competing against dairy manure facilities that have the ability, they just want to get the manure off of their site. So they will give it to agriculture for free. So it's hard to compete with something that's free. To give you perspective on that. And then, but again, yeah, we're selling into erosion control, garden center markets, bagging operations, commercial landscaping is our largest market. But just to give you guys perspective, also for my market in Colorado, diversion has been really increasing in Colorado. We're really pushing forward on legislation to continue to divert more organics. But where we're having the downfall is the push for compost use. And so what is happening here for us is as the market is increasing for diversion, the market for compost use is not keeping pace. And so what's kind of happening, as you can see at our site here, we have a large volume of compost that has an opportunity to go back into the market. But if we're not keeping pace, we're going to run out of room and we won't be able to keep up with pace on the diversion. So that's where I love this conversation about where we're going. And that's where also, like Pierce has the exact opposite, where he's not worried about that. But for me, I'm like, hey, let's get compost into our soils for healthy soil initiatives, because that's the benefit. So we'll get into that more. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to have this call. Really appreciate it.
Great, thank you, Clinton. And then we're gonna wrap up question 1 with Chuck, or welcome. Can you hear me, Chuck? I'm looking for Chuck's name on here. He's in the participant
Here we go.
list. Can you hear me, Chuck? Charles Dupre?
Yes, guys, sorry. This app, I have to click something extra on you. My apologies.
No worries. Welcome. Is it Charles or Chuck? What would you prefer?
Chuck is fine. We're among friends here. Chuck is fine.
Okay, cool.
So apologies for being mobile.
No worries. So you want me to read the question 1 to you? I put it in the chat, but just since you're joining, I'm just going to read it one more time. As a part of introducing yourself and your organization, describe how you intersect with either compost manufacturing, compost sales, or the large-scale application of compost.
Certainly. Hello, everyone. I'm Chuck Dupre. Nice to meet you all. Vice chair of the Compost Research Education Foundation, and served on a number of USCC committees over the years. Nature Cycle, the company I founded in 2015, we interact with all of those aspects of composting. We deal with municipal and private composters, marketing and utilizing their finished compost and helping to improve process where need be. We then sell that compost into a variety of markets, be it landscape, soil restoration, small amounts of agriculture. And then lastly, we are a large engineered soil manufacturer ourselves from a number of, we have 3 different sites in the Northeast, outside New York and Boston. So we touch upon all those different aspects of compost, and I've been involved in the Composting Council and a few other things since about 2009. So appreciate the time today.
Great. Thanks
Yeah.
for being here.
Yeah, that's great. We are going to shift to question 2. And so let me put that in the chat for you. All right. So what are the attributes or quality factors that you need to address in order to meet project specifications and bring large volumes of compost to market? Who are some of your large end-use customers? What are their needs and requirements to meet the specifications for large-scale application? What do you believe are the greatest opportunities large-scale application of compost provides? And what I'm going to ask is for folks to try and manage around 2 minutes. If you go over, that's fine, but I'm going to let you know. We just want to make sure that we get to everything today. We're going to start with Pierce.
Cool, thanks. I think that the quick background, we just had a new marketing person start, and I had to explain to him, I said, we sell the exact same product every year to the same customers. And so versus, other industries where there's, new and innovative, and this is different, like for 14, 15 years, we've sold the exact same product. It's Dirt Hugger Organic Compost. So it's kind of a different thing when you're really just selling over and over. And so, brand loyalty and product consistency and product performance are what matter if you're trying to sell. I mean, it's basically like toothpaste or toilet paper or something. You like Colgate Total, and then ideally you just stick with it as long as it keeps, your teeth clean. So I will say with that background, you have to think about, is it a new customer or an old customer in terms of what are the quality specifications that matter to them. So if it's a new customer, I would say it's 3 different things. So one would be the visual effect of the compost is the most important thing. So if you go to a retail yard, or you go to our retail yard or any of our customers, and you look at it and you see contamination in it, that's kind of a deal killer. They're looking for color, they're looking for the smell, they're really buying with their eyes. They have no clue, for the most part, at that point, what's in the compost. Is it good? Will it perform? So, really what they want are healthy plants, but they're looking with their eyes, and they're connoting quality by looking at the material. And so if they see visual contamination, it's a deal killer. Number 2 behind it, and this is again for like larger scale projects, would be specs, handing out lab data, handing out spec sheets. That would be the number 2 criteria. And then 3 would be performance. But again, if it's a new customer, it's actually too late. Like they've already made the purchase before they understand the performance of the product, right? So they looked at it, it looked good, smelled good, felt good. They took it home, and it's only 2 or 3 months later before they know, did that product actually work? And so it's kind of an interesting thing where the performance is after the sale. So I would say those are the biggest drivers for us. Being organic is, I would say it's an order qualifier. It's not an order winner. Our customers across the board expect organic. We have a lot of our customers that aren't organic, but when they see that is a specification we have, it connotes a high level of quality. So we have a lot of orchard customers that are not organic, but they're like, oh, if you went through all the OMRI process, it must be good. And so I don't think we would ever win a compost sale because we're organic versus a customer, but we have to have that.
That's great. Thank you so much. Charles, I'm going to go back to you in the lineup. If you're ready for question 2, go ahead and jump in.
I gotta unmute myself. Sorry, on the app. Takes a second. You're throwing a lot into one question there, to be honest. I mean, I agree with Pierce. There's a lot of, repetitive business, but if we're looking at compost overall, since that's kind of having the discussion today, you've got 6 or 7 different climate types throughout the continental United States alone that all have slightly different soil characteristics and needs that lead to slightly different compost products. So putting a one size fits all approach on compost. It probably is a better answer from the Matt Cotton standpoint that it's a very local, in a way, product. So, what I can do in the Northeast for our humid continental climate isn't the same that's beneficial to a subtropical Florida climate or a Mediterranean California product. So, I mean, you're asking to sum up like a variety of different aspects of soil science and how the compost gets used into like a 30-second buzz. I'm not sure I could do that, or that's actually very beneficial. But I mean, beyond that, it's one, branding is always important in any marketing of any product, and having an understanding of what it is, differentiating compost from other compost, be it via OMRI or the seal testing assurance program is a great way to do that. It's a differentiation. It's not necessarily an endorsement per se. Finding ways to expand markets, like Clinton was kind of touching upon, is also important, is having buy-in from different aspects of, the markets. The fact that compost rarely goes into one market, in the sense that, landscape is different than a bagged product like A1 is doing or Nature Cycle might do for retail use of what becomes a potting mix or something like that. So, compost has a unique benefit and a potential challenge that there's a number of different markets and application. So finding ways to optimize that and grow that, it's fairly complex. So, I mean, I didn't really answer your question too well, but that's my 25-cent version.
No, that's great. I appreciate all of that, and just love spotlighting that, how local each process is, and also how local each climate and soil is. And so really appreciate that. All right, Ryan.
Hey, so yeah, echo here's a lot, and also echo Chuck. It's a very broad question, but I tried to bring it down into really what makes sense for me and for Denali and our company. So first thing, very similar to what Pierce said, I need three things. I need contamination to be managed. I need the material to be properly composted, and I need more so than anything else, I need consistency in those two things. So another thing that hasn't been touched on yet, that is definitely, and I wouldn't say it's a quality factor, but it's definitely an attribute for us, is inventory management. So you need to have enough compost to meet the demands of your customer base, while still being able to operate within your storage limitations at your site. So, we pride ourselves in being, we're one of the big suppliers. My phone rings when someone needs 10,000 yards of compost, right? But who in their right mind can store 10,000 yards of finished product just waiting around for the phone to ring, right? So we walk that line. We walk that line a lot, and we walk it at a lot of our facilities. So that's where the consistency part comes in, and I need to know that if I start a project in 2023, that's not going to wrap up until 2025, that I can manage my inventory, keep the product on the ground for that customer, maintain the same product quality and consistency from start to finish on that project. And that's not even including the time frame in the beginning. So if we submit on a project in 2022 and it's not going to happen until 2024, my submittal needs to match what I'm delivering the customer later on in the process. So the consistency here, I said, to echo Pierce, consistency goes a very long way when you're talking high volume markets. Okay. Another thing I want to point out, I think is really, really important, is that your sales plan and your ability to move material really needs to match your company's desire to bring in organic waste. So if I don't have a great sales plan and my company is like, bring in more, we want tip fees, I'm choking on material. I can't move out the back end. So having a alignment between your operational team, your inbound team, your product sales and distribution team, and your sales reps out on the field, and a pulse on what the customers need and have coming up, really is vital in this whole equation. Many times we quote jobs that are not going to happen for 6 months to 24 months out. So again, consistency for me is key. And the final part of this, the greatest opportunity, the opportunity for us is the larger the products, or larger the projects, the larger the demand, the more organic waste we can bring in. the more revenue our company can earn, the more people we can help in the field, and overall, the largest impact we can have on the environment.
That's great. Thank you so much. Calarose.
All right, I'm going to time myself here. Let me get my timer going. I think the biggest thing for folks out there is you really need to understand your markets. You can hear that in the other speakers. Who are your markets? Are they largely orchards and vineyards? Can they afford to pay for an organic product? Do you have maybe in Colorado, there's a difference. We don't have large scale crops in the same way that California or Oregon or Washington do. There's a huge untapped market in rangelands, and I'll get to that in a second. But I think the biggest thing you got to look at is what are your regional markets, and it's probably going to be more than one. Maybe you're pretty small and you're just kind of going for people's gardens. But in general, you got to look around and understand what these folks have been saying, which are what are your feedstocks, where are they coming from, and where are your markets? And then specifically, and I think this is where I'm very excited for the compost industry, because I think we're on the edge of a revolution, which is instead of composting just being a way to manage an organic material at the end of its life or a diversion strategy from landfill, I think there's so much room for product differentiation. Dirt Hugger is a great example of this. You know, they will add minerals to your soils, to their compost to get what you need for your soil type. Being able to create differentiated products, both for the agricultural market that you are going for or home market you're going for, as well as products that have different price points. So I've seen some composters offer very clean overs that don't have plastic in them for rangeland customers, because it's a cheaper product. And that product can have some benefits in those rangelands. I do think large scale opportunities exist in agriculture. In California, the state's Healthy Soils program and the Natural and Working Lands Climate program, which I worked on, the limitation to expanding organic agriculture in the state came down to a limitation of compost supply. So the single biggest thing when the state looked at, well, can we expand organic agriculture? Can we do anything to kind of increase mandates towards healthy soil? It all came down to a constraint in compost supply. I think rangelands is another huge opportunity, but the economics of that are pretty difficult because you have to make a product either on site or right next to that site in order for it to make sense, because it's a highly marginal system. I am past my 2 minutes, so I will stop.
Thank you so much. Really incredible. I'm going to read out Charlie Bayer's comment. So his response is, we are more likely to measure applications in hundreds of square feet, not hundreds of acres. Nonetheless, at any scale, education of end users is key. Specifiers on large scale projects can often rely on cut and paste from previous projects or the projects of others without having their own depth of knowledge. Retail consumers can face a baffling array of product choices without good point of sale support. Our market is horticultural, turf, and urban agricultural applications. Rather than having to meet our specifications from end users, we find education of end users is what's essential. Showing folks how and when to make the best use of small amounts. When quality is high, a little goes a long way. Our facility is not only in the public eye, but open once a week on Sunday afternoons. Total transparency and open communication about the process with all of the participants in it. Seeing is believing. All right, and Clinton, if you want to.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna trying to add something new because Ryan and I cross over a lot, and so does, and also Pierce talking about branding loyalty and brand quality. We cross over a lot. For A1 Organics, volume, consistency, and confidence. We, like Ryan was mentioning, we could have a phone call come in on a Friday afternoon and we need 15 45 cubic yard trucks going out Monday morning to help our customer that we're attending to. You know, we have to have volume, we have to have space to help support these large customers. Landscape Yards is one of those large customers that wants consistency and volume. And like Ryan was also mentioning, potentially a job could last 2 years. And they're going to want, they spec it in the beginning, they're going to want that consistent compost across the board. So this all comes back to a consistent stream of quality, clean organics, where contamination affects that process all the way through. And two things I want to speak to that is contamination, like the more touch you have to put on your finished compost, meaning screening or processing, manual or mechanical, you're changing the aspects of that finished compost. We manufacture all of our compost, 5 of them, based on the application use. Is it top dressing? Is it erosion control? Is it going into a garden? Is it large scale agricultural? Well, that's how we design our finished compost, is based around those parameters. So if we have to consistently change, or if we have to consistently add more touch, we're changing the profile of that finished compost by either density, bulk density, the weight of it, the screen size, which then changes the application, which then changes the market. And potentially that market could be smaller. So it's very challenging. That's where contamination really affects the system and the stream and the end market. The other thing too, where I want to go back to, is confidence in the product. We live in a digital world. We live with Google reviews. We live with social media. It does not take much to have a bad quality finished compost get to market and show pieces of glass or show pieces of small plastics, and that can hit 1,000 people within 5 seconds, if not more. And so having consistent streams with consistent finished product is so important in our world today. I personally work on Google reviews every day, and that is a very large challenge right there. I think I have a little bit of time. So the last thing I want to say is, what do we believe is the greatest opportunities for large scale compost or large scale application of compost provides? Here in Colorado, the large scale application within agriculture has the highest environmental benefits, including water soil retention, increased carbon sequestration, natural resource management, local economy impact, increased nutritional value in crop production, and increased yield, agricultural and farmer economy impact, healthy soils. And I can't stress it enough, and is healthy soils benefit everyone. It benefits our economy, it benefits everyone. Compost is a great part of the healthy soil initiative and the healthy soil push. So I think we're on a brink too, like Kayla had just said, like, man, when we turn on and realize the beneficial impact of compost application in the soil, we will never be able to produce enough, but the impact will be so beneficial. It's so great. So I'll stop, get off my soapbox. I get really excited about that.
That's great. Thank you, Colton.
All right, we're going to go over to question 3. So it's, what challenges have you had taking compost products to market? What have been some of the greatest challenges with creating quality compost that serves the end user in the ways that they require and meets the variety of customer needs? So we'll start with Pierce.
I'm gonna tee off. I'm assuming that's gonna be 5 rounds of pounding over the head, but the number one and the really, I would say at this point, close to only challenge in getting compost to market consistently is contamination. Product performance, I think even in the time that we've been involved, like the availability and knowledge and training on how to make really good compost, there's a lot of training courses, there's a lot of technology out there. We don't really have product performance issues anymore. In the early days we did, because our process wasn't great, or it wasn't on air long enough, or we didn't turn it enough or whatever. But now that our process is dialed in, it's a manufacturing process, the performance, I looked through our complaint log, which I'm sure every facility, you're legally required to have one. We don't see issues like my plants didn't grow. Every single one of them is contamination. It's just down the line, like contamination. And you can break it into all the different categories, but like for us, and people love sending pictures. They'll pick through their pile, and then they show it's their hands or their kids' hands, and they show all the pieces of contamination that they picked out of it, and they send it to us, and each one is like a little like knife driven into the customer. So it's small, Glass is the number one hardest one. We all know, because if it shatters on the front end, we have no mechanical way of removing it, and it's too small to pick out. So we do a pre-treatment. We have a 2-inch minus screen. Anything 2-inch minus falls out. Anything larger than 2 inches gets hand-picked by our crew. So what we see in there is high density plastic. We see thin film plastic. We see glass. Rock is a visual contaminant. It does upset customers, but it's not, really bad for the product. And so the biggest challenge is you can have the highest performing compost on the market. But if it's got contamination in it, people instantly think that it's bad compost and it won't grow. And that's the hardest part is I could sell somebody, compost that will do really, really well. And if it's got contamination in it, their plants could be the best ever, but they still think it's bad. And so it is a crusher and it is a killer. We spend 17% of our costs dealing with contamination. I've got slides and slides and slides about the amount of labor, the amount of equipment, the amount of disposal that we spend on it. But it is our number one cost. It is our number one challenge. If you had to put a small corollary behind it, I would say delivery radius, the weight of the product, how far you can deliver before you run out of value in the product would be a second one. So your, typical rule of thumb is, 100 miles. We sell it sometimes up to 200 miles if people really, really want it. But, weight versus end product. So, yeah, there we go. You're teed up.
Thanks, Pierce. Chuck, let's go over to you. I think you're off mute.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm that guy today. Yeah, contamination obviously is our first and most widespread challenge that all composters will face, be it, inert contamination like Pierce is talking about, other foreign materials that might be a problem. But beyond that, it's understanding that local market and really being able to dial in what's going to be a financially viable long-term product mix, in the sense that quite often, everybody kind of talked about it, but most composters who are successful have a blend of markets that people are interested in supplying. So coarser material for erosion control, finer material for in-soil applications that might be landscape or retail supply yard. So be able to dial in, feedstock and a process that then meets those end demands is very important and quite challenging to many people. And then Ryan mentioned it rightfully so, that it's the balance that becomes a problem quite often in these facilities, that they get so driven by the feedstock tipping fee up front that they allow product quality to slip or end up with too much material and provide a bad name to the industry as a whole. So, there's definitely multiple problems that, unlike some other manufacturers, because we're not manufacturing just enough product to meet demand, we tend to be a bit more of a waste management type solution. So we end up with, often in most cases, more supply than demand. So Earth Matter mentioned, I think it's Governor's Island, building markets is critical, and educating and, combining those things. So sadly, composters, unlike other manufacturers, are tasked with, that toothpaste manufacturer of Pierce's doesn't really have to educate the public on toothpaste too much. It's competing against other toothpaste. Well, compost, you have to do a ton of education to make sure the end users are, one, using it properly, that you're making a good product, and that you're meeting a supply and demand, model that's not going to, flood your system. So, that's kind of my quick overview. Not, I think the contamination's issue number one, obviously, but also how you build a model for your local markets is probably the second, biggest challenge there.
Great. Thank you, Chuck. Ryan.
So I made an effort on this question to try to come up with answers that I didn't think Pierce and Chuck and Clinton, and I really tried, but it turns out I'm going to say the same thing. So, so with a little bit of variance, so for me, the biggest challenge, I'm going to use myself specifically, that I've had early on in my career was education, right? So Denali is a large manager of biosolids, and in that we produce a lot of biosolids compost. And I spent I spent a lot of time in the early part in this industry, you know, driving out to customers' yards and, you know, setting up a tent and standing there waiting for homeowners to come buy compost and educating them about what it is, right? What biosolids is, why it's okay, and, you know, helping people overcome that ick factor that sometimes comes with some of our products. So I would say education was a hurdle. It's gotten a lot better, but it still always will be a hurdle, and it's something that we've learned to work through it with a lot of support of trade organizations, U.S. Compost Council, and you know all these other great organizations. So that's great, and not only educating the customer, but when you start to talk about large scale projects, Clinton and Pierce, you know, Chuck, and I'm sure everybody who's done a large scale product and test this, we also have to educate architects and engineers. Customers only part of the battle. Right, I have to go convince an architect or an engineer to write this into the spec. Where you know there's people out there that are just anti certain types of compost, so we have to go make that case, right? So that's you know I teach my sales team all the time. It's a three-legged stool, you know, and if one leg falls out, the stool collapses. But you know the three legs of the stool are, you know, you're selling to a project, you're selling to a customer, or you're selling to an architect or an engineer, right? And we're always selling in all three of those categories at all times. So that's number one. Second one, I really didn't think anyone was going to touch on this, but they did. Pierce did. So geography is, you know, the further the projects are away from our compost sites, the more unrealistic it becomes for us to move our product out. So in a perfect world, I'm going to sell hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of compost within 20 miles of my facilities, and we're going to have low fuel costs and low contracting costs and low trucking costs and all those things that go, but it's just not the case, especially if your site is off the beaten path, which a lot of our sites are for obvious reasons. So, you know, managing the geography of the projects versus your product is really a challenge, and it's a challenge more often than it's not, truthfully. And then the other one that no one touched on yet, and I'm happy about that, is equipment, right? So equipment changes. I'm going to give you an example. One of our facilities that we've been operating for years and years and years, we had the same old McCloskey screener in there running, chugging along forever. We were putting out a 3/8 minus compost. It was the same product every single year forever. And then all of a sudden the screener broke. And it was beyond the you know the ability to repair. So we bought a new screener. Same screen size, same type of screener, but now I have an entirely different product coming off the belly. So I have customers call me, Ryan, what is this? The customers have been buying me for 10 years. What is this product? Why does it look differently? It looks different. Is this the same thing? Can I come to the site? You know, so understanding that a quick operational decision to change a piece of equipment, or if you're in in the Denali world where we're a relatively large company, lots of locations, it's not uncommon for a screener to just disappear from one of our sites. Like Tuesday, it's there. Wednesday, it's gone. And another one's coming in because we had to move equipment. We have assets we have to move all around the region. So now I have a new screener in and the product changes. So making sure, again, communication, and this kind of goes back to the second question, consistency. We need to stay consistent with those things because these little changes and adjustments can ripple into a very large product sales and distribution project or problem down the line.
Great, thank you. Okay, Kella Rose.
Yeah, I mean, I think the folks you have on this call are amazing composters and incredible businessmen. And so I don't think I need to add to what they already know. What I guess I'll say is, as an economist and political economist in this space, the single biggest issue I see at a policy level is location and geography. And it's just, the compost is so limited by the cost of hauling. Pierce brought up the cost of spreading. That's also an additional cost. The larger projects you get when you start to get into really big systems, like maybe large grain systems or rangelands, where you see these really amazing benefits, but their huge acreage is the spreading cost. So from my perspective, what I've pursued from a policy point of view is to allow for compost operations that are small and mid-scale, the medium scale, to exist in a cheaper fashion. So trying to open up a regulatory space whereby small and medium, either satellite or community sites, can get set up on farms, on ranches, in communities that are close to feedstocks, maybe agricultural feedstocks, maybe forest thinning feedstocks, maybe biosolid feedstocks. But, and there's, maybe there's a casino on tribal lands where you have a high rate of food waste, but just trying to allow these sites to get, not only right now, it's just like death by 1,000 paper cuts, unless you're in Western Colorado where I am, in which case you can kind of just set them up, and we have a lot of them in the county I'm in, and they are close to their market and they're close to their feedstocks and they do great business. In places like California or the Front Range of Colorado, they're a lot more limited by policies on where you can develop those sites and how you can develop them. And so because I am working on trying to open up the larger macro scale market for compost, my target in the last 2 or 3 years, and will probably continue to be for the next year or two, is to open up space for these medium sites, either as satellites for the large operators, or as ways for communities and small businesses to start operations in their areas that can feed into markets that maybe are less high value, like rangelands or grain crops, which aren't able to pay the same amount as orchards or these other high value vineyard crops. The second thing I would say, and people don't like to hear this, but everybody in agriculture knows this, ag is a highly regulated market, and unless you have policy and you have subsidy, you will not have the type of market access that you need. So I think market access is really, really important, both from a training perspective. You got to get people out there teaching. The education thing got brought up. Technical assistance is a huge indicator of market adoption, but it has to be followed up with policy. I heard Linda say that 336 from NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, that practice standard coming online is starting to drive more compost. That's something that John and I and a lot of other folks worked really hard on to get that cost share subsidy. The other piece is, I'd say, in the Healthy Soils program in California, compost is by far and away the largest program where money goes because it has the most applicants. And again, I haven't met a farmer or a rancher who doesn't want quality compost. The issue is cost. So can you lower that cost through policy and subsidy and cost share? Can you lower that cost by lessening the distance and the hauling associated with that? And can you try to lower that cost by creating products that are differentiated? Maybe that cleaner, like a wood chip overs product that still may have those benefits for the rangeland, but is not going to be as heavy or as costly as your, full organic compost that a vineyard or an orchard might use. So product differentiation, policy, subsidy, and support, and proximity. And those are the big, big indicators and big challenges that we face in getting the product to market. And that means supplying the value that the producer of compost needs at a price point that these larger markets can afford.
Thanks, Kelly Rose. Okay, Clinton, let's close with you for this question.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, I'm gonna try not to land it the same, but like Pierce, like everybody's saying, it's for us contamination. Contamination is on the top of this list of one of the greatest challenges with our, not only with processing, but then of the finished product once it goes to market. Pierce had said also, and Pierce, I actually brought up a photo of hands with glass in them. It's becoming a trend. The other things, so education outside of reducing contamination and understanding that when you put something in a bin that's going to an organics compost manufacturer or compost manufacturer, like the not greenwashing, but the wish recycling, like we have to connect back to the all diverters, that how impactful that really is. It's not the same as source separated. It's not the same as like recycling with multiple, like plastic recycling and glass recycling and paper recycling all put in one bin. The impact is different. And and how impactful it can be is just enormous. One bottle can take out hundreds of cubic yards of compost and affect its finished market. And it's so important, like on that educational side, that when we're creating education around like closing the compost loop, we say that in our industry all the time, let's close the compost loop. What does that mean? But that, I say this in all my marketing talks, is like the education has to stay consistent and continual. It's not just one and done. You continually to educate, continually to build on your educational program, and you don't stop. It's something that has to always happen. That's what compost manufacturers are doing. We're continually educating our customers. But diversion programs, municipalities, restaurants, you name it, anybody that's moving organics out of landfills has to continually educate. And change your education as the industry changes too. Like continue to build on that and build on the successes that we're seeing. The other thing I just wanted to touch on, I was trying to write notes as we were going here. I want to go back to how more touch on a finished compost at a compost manufacturer changes the dynamic of hauling as well. If we're screening twice, we're increasing our bulk density. So potentially a 45 cubic yard semi truck that was going to a landscape contractor can now only hold 35 cubic yards. Now you're getting less product for the same cost of that haul. That really affects the volume going out. It affects the customer's costs, affects our costs. So again, it's the contamination, man. It is the number one. And I just can't reinforce enough that how much benefit there is with finished compost in the soil. If we can get to a point where you know how much impact anybody walks up to that bin and throws something in and goes, oh my gosh, no way, we can't do that. You know how much impact that's going to cause to that finished compost, to our healthy soils down the street, at our local agriculture, our local farming? We just have to get to that point. We have to get to that behavioral change to understand what we're doing is so impactful and so beneficial. So I'm probably out of time. I'm gonna stop.
Yes, you are. Thank you. Okay, so we have 15 minutes left. We have 2 more questions. I forgot to read Charlie's answer for question number 3. So let me just read that really quickly, and then we're going to go to question number 4, and then we're going to try to do question number 5 as a lightning round. So just try to be very concise in your responses for the last 2. Charlie's response to the question we just finished, he says the biggest challenge to creating a quality product is the time and space to develop real maturity. We are fortunate to have both at the moment. We don't screen until at least 9 months, often 12 months. There is definite additional biological development in that window and even more beyond 12 months. Our product is humus-like with stable organic carbon content and high fungal biomass. So Candy's going to lead us for question 4.
Yeah, so this question, we always do a conversation with all the panelists to ensure that we're asking questions that allow everybody to tell the story that they want to tell and need to tell. And so this question emerged out of that. And so what percentage of your throughput is residual or overs? What can you share about residual management, and how does contamination affect what can be done with these materials? And you've heard pieces and parts of that, but we really wanted to dive into this. And so Pierce, if you want to lead us off, and then Clinton, if you've ever recorded your educational webinar, we can find a way to share that.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll try to go quickly. At our finished screen, our yield is about 50-50. So 50% is a 3/8 inch minus product. The other 50% is overs that typically get re-recycled around our site. That creates, for 62,000 tons a year, it creates a mass balance in excess of residuals of 30,000 yards a year. And so it's actually a massive challenge. At a certain point, you can kind of recycle them for a while, but the contamination just builds up and builds up over time. So if it were clean, so if our overs were completely clean, we have endless, this is Raquel Rose, if we could grind it, I could get it out into a lot of different applications. I love the idea of rebuilding soil and just putting it on some land that's really depleted. But unfortunately, the level of contamination that's in those overs makes it unusable. And so we've been landfilling. We spent $150,000 this year landfilling overs because of the level of contamination in there. So I think I see a lot of the people on this phone call. I see a lot of product brands, and I'm really glad that you're here. I see a lot of big brands. What we're talking about is material management, right? So when you think about what comes into facility, you have to think about everything that goes in. It can't be like, oh, let's just think about the product, because that's only 50% of the story. You know, what's coming into our site, we have to think about every aspect of it. And I always say at our site, things leave our site in only one of two forms, either product or garbage. And so there is no third market for it. And so it either has to be a product that is clean of contamination that I can sell, or it's leaving as garbage. And so if 50% of what's coming into our site is being rendered as garbage due to contamination, that I would say that is a material management fail. So yes, we have been able to, process it responsibly and avoid methane. So that's a plus, right? From environmentally, carbon wise, but material flow wise, if 50% of it's going to landfill, then we haven't done the job that we set out to do. I would want to be targeting more of 80, 90% of the materials that come into our site are a usable product. I'll stop there, but I do think if you're sending something into a facility, we have to make sure, with a reasonable effort, that it will turn into a product and become part of the product, not turn up in the landfill.
No, that's great. And Susan, thanks for adding the definition in the chat. Everybody can take a look at that. And so, Chuck.
This is not really our side of the equation, so probably don't have a lot to add to this side, but Pierce, echoing Pierce's attitude.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ryan.
This is one of those questions where it's very unique based on the location. And we operate multiple, we operate municipal biosolid sites, and we operate smaller yard waste, food waste facilities. Okay, so I echo a lot of what Pierce says at a lot of our sites. But then we also have sites where, in like biosolids sites, for example, inbound is clean. There's no contamination in it. So our screen product, and then our overs, no contamination. So I have very clean overs that I can run back through the process a few times, use them as an inoculant to get the process going. And then once they've run their course, we can go to erosion sediment control markets with them. We can go to, just general customers who need woody material for whatever. So our sales team is also in the business of selling the overs or the residuals. Now, if you go to a site where we have more of a higher contamination site, it's maybe not a biosolids site. In that instance, we have very contaminated overs, just like Pierce said, because if there's contamination on the front end, there's going to be even more in the overs because the screeners are screening it out, right? You're hopefully screening some of that contamination out, and it's ending up in your residual, right? In those instances, we're dealing with the same problems that everybody else is. But I would say that if we have clean-ish overs, for the most part, we are able to turn them into a saleable product, and not have a massive issue. Now, we also have some municipal contracts where we don't even own the overs. The municipality supplies us the wood waste that goes into the process, and therefore they own the overs, and that works out for both of us because they come and they collect them, right, and they use them for their own use at whatever site they're going to use them at. So, and sometimes we help. We point them in the right direction of what they can.
No, that's great.
With them, let's use a hypothetical site, right? And they do a tree planting project. They can use the overs as long as there's no contamination to mulch all those tree plantings, right? So we've done a bunch of different things with them. We've got creative. Some of them even go to bagging. I have bagging customers who just need wood, so wood fiber. So we're able to shift the material around. But it's, like I said, it's multifaceted. Every facility is different. Some locations it's a massive problem. Some locations it's not a problem at all, right? So that's my answer on that.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Ryan. All right, Calrose.
Yeah, I think that the point that was made that this is a materials management question is really the way to look at this. You know, if you are sourcing ag materials only or a biosolid material, you're not going to have that contamination. Although I'm curious about the increased use of plastic in ag fields and if that's coming in with any sorts of overs, not overs, but biomass residuals. So I think that, you know, contamination is largely about which stream you're in. And then I will also say that at least, again, I can really only speak in this case for California or for my local community where I live now in Western Colorado. What I've seen in California is the role of community composters in reducing contamination in the stream that's most contaminated, which is municipal organic waste. And community composters have been very, very effective at educating people and getting the streams really, really clean. This is challenging because a lot of the waste haulers in different cities were really set up to haul waste. They weren't necessarily set up to be environmental educators or compost educators, but community composters are these crazy people who just love this thing so much that they're out there knocking on people's doors being like, look, you can't put animal bones in this, you know, or, hey, I noticed you have a lot of plastic, what's going on? And so I think we are seeing some interesting examples where Athens, which is a very large waste hauling company in Los Angeles, is contracted with LA Compost to go after their harder to get areas in their service territory, but also to support education, because those community composters are incredible educators. And they are also non-labor, non-unionized. They're very cheap, which is all to say that, like, I think in a lot of cases where you have high contamination in waste streams, finding a community composters who are in those communities can go out and really knock on doors and help people do better about contamination. In the cases where micro hauling exists, those micro haulers their material streams are very, very good from what I've seen. Yes, they still deal with contamination, but they are in direct contact with their customers. So I think that, so there's the user education and the kind of like, this is what happens when you're collecting in bulk from users who just throw stuff in bins versus like, this is what happens when you have a relationship with someone who comes to your door and tells you about like vegetables and the climate and gardens and lots of cool stuff. And then there's the fact that like, the plastics industry is ridiculous, and we're all going to have to organize at some point to figure out how to get this contaminant out of our stream. Like, it's ridiculous that composters have to deal with this. And it devalues, I mean, the amount of cost you've just heard on this call about how much this costs people. Like, in no other industry that I'm aware of does somebody else's industry cost that industry so much money. Like, it's crazy. And I think that one of the bigger policy pushes that we're going to need to unite around at some point is really how to get both those forever chemicals and those plastics out of the stream. Glass is a more challenging story, but as an industry, like, it's crazy to me that we haven't yet organized around getting those things out, because we're the ones who are dealing with them at the end of the day, and they're directly increasing businesses and affecting bottom lines. And that is a policy game, and that's about organizing in that sense. So I think there's a lot of innovation on the community composter partnership side and community organizations who can work door to door. And then I think there's a lot of organizing that needs to happen at the industry level to be like, look, you cannot impact our business this much. We are not going to pay for your waste cleanup. And I think that is something that I am looking forward to being part of in the future.
That's great. Thank you so much. I am going to read Charlie's response, which is quick. He said, reintegration of overs into our process has been a regular and balanced part of operations for 10 years. Having used 4 to 5 tons of cubic yards, of wood chip over that time, we usually have only 100 to 200 cubic yards of overs on site at any given time. Over the last 9 months, with our funding situation uncertain, we've been accepting less feedstock and thus reusing fewer overs. I'm considering 2 options for this increasing volume. Deep, I'm totally going to botch this word, hugelkultur. So hopefully somebody can correct me if I got that really wrong, like layering under planting areas of a new site or as a feedstock for biochar. Both uses will require getting the overs very clean of contaminants. Okay, and Clinton, if you can take us home for this last question, what we're going to do with question 5 is we're going to add it to our panelist Q&A document. And so everybody will have a chance to answer that, and then we'll share that back out with everybody.
Yeah, to speak to the residual or what we call overs, you know, we're looking at about 20 to 30%. 20 to 30% is the screened overs that come out through the screening process that are contaminated. But it's not all of our finished composts that we create have contaminated overs. I'm going to share my photo again real quick because I think this will help visually understand what we're explaining. Can you guys all see that again? And when I move my cursor around, can you see this? Okay, thank you, Pierce. So like Kayla just had expressed too, like we specifically control how organics are coming into our site because this is our larger site, and depending on the generator is going to depend on the type of contamination and the volume and quality or quantity of contamination in the stream. And so like on this side of the site where I'm circling right now is where source separated organics come in from large municipalities or large commercial haulers along the Colorado Front Range. This is where we see the highest contamination, and the number 1 and 2 contaminator is lightweight plastics and hard plastics. But specifically right here is, you can't see the topography here, but there's a larger hill. All of this material and all of this processing you see on the right never gets an opportunity to have any source separated organics in that manufacturing process. It's all clean organics sourced commercially or potentially biosolids, or it's very specific, very controlled. And we don't want this side to affect all of this, which will affect our markets and our customers. You know, we sell a lot into bagging, to the bagging industry. 0 tolerance for glass, 100% 0 tolerance. So, but we have to control that. That's material management control on our site so that we don't affect everything. Very important. And I wanted to, the last thing I was just going to say, tipping fees. If you're thinking about tipping fees and land and contamination associated with that, our business, we get tipping fees on incoming organics to create a finished compost that goes back into the market. If the tipping fees has to be increased, we're going to increase the cost of our finished compost back into the market because we have to cover those tipping fees to cover the landfill cost of getting rid of those overs. But if it's balanced, we can have a very economical recycling rate cost, and we can have a very economical, powerful, clean finished compost on the other end. That is a very great balanced business in operation. But if contamination is hitting it hard on that side, you're affecting the whole balance of those economics through this process, which is that's what we're dealing with as a business. I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's great. And I just appreciate everybody, all of you here for being here in this conversation, all of our panelists. And Linda, thank you so much for organizing this particular discovery workshop. Just incredible insights and knowledge and sharing out with the rest of the community, you know, all the different things that you're dealing with to really close that circle. And this is really at the heart of circularity, is creating a product that then can be used out for all of these incredible environmental benefits. And so we will hopefully see you next Thursday. We have our next discovery workshop on certifiers, ASTM labs, and compostable certification research. And so we've got an incredible panel coming next Thursday. By the end of today, we will have this session on our YouTube channel. If you would like to get more involved, please let us know. We've got our email in the chat. If you have questions for the panelists today and you didn't have a chance to write it down, jot us a note, and so we can include that, and then we'll share that back out. So just deeply appreciative of everyone. Love the conversation today, and we will see you here same time next Thursday. Thank you so much.